one of the questions that I thought was funny that came up when I was talking to some of the cast and crew of The Cultists after, some of our shoots and stuff like that, we were just hanging around, is some people were wondering, or some people people commented like, I wouldn't want to be a producer. Like, why would you even want to be a producer? They want to be the actors. They want to be the directors or the director of photography. But I was the only one there who had this interested in being in the producer. So why be the producer? And what does that mean in order to get something like this off the ground?
Wow. Okay. Well, let me answer the first question. Why be a producer? If you have a story that you want told, there has to be a producer. So either you have to go convince someone to be your producer, or you have to. I became a producer because I knew I was the only producer who knew that I was a great director. So that's why I did that. And it all starts with the story. What's the story? What story are you telling? Are you passionate about the story? Because from firsthand experience, if you're not passionate about your subject, you might as well go home. Because anytime, I've made films for as little as $32,000. I shouldn't say I made them. I was part of films for as little as $32,000 and part of films as high as $14.8 million. And these things are true. There's never enough time and there's never enough money. I don't care what you're doing. So you have to be passionate about it, because if you're shooting 6 days a week for 6 weeks, it's exhausting. As a producer or director, you're the first person on set in the morning and you're the last person to leave. The only way you get through that is passion. The only way to raise money is passion. The only way to push through it and get things made is passion, because making films, making television, it's war. It's war. So you got to be passionate. You got to lead the troops and get things done.
Well, I think so. In order to make it happen,
yes,
like that's the reason to be the producer right there. I mean, that's how I kind of got into it. Is I was like, hey, I've got this idea, but if there's not a producer, it's not going to get done. So if you want to get it done, then you may have to step into that role, and that's the person who's actually going to make it happen.
Sure. Well, producers come in many flavors. There are people who are creative producers, and they find a story, and they're passionate about the story, and so they try to enlist other people, directors or cast or crew. And then there are, but they don't want anything to do with the mechanics of the production. They just have a creative vision and they want to have creative control. Then you have someone who's like a line producer, and their whole job is the nuts and bolts of the day-to-day getting it done, dealing with the contracts to make sure the actors' contracts are correct and lived up to, making sure that people are hired, making sure that there's toilet paper in the porta potty. I mean, all that stuff takes a mechanism, and that's what a line producer does. And then, of course, you have an executive producer who's typically the person who is they're accountable to the investors for the money. Really, at the end of the day, the executive producer is the guy who gets in there and says, hey, this is how your money's being spent. This is why we're doing it this way. And, I know the schedule looks like we're 2 days over schedule, but we're going to work that out because we're going to fix this, this, and this. And it makes everybody happy and okay. So you have the creative guys who are strictly creative. You have the business guys who are strictly business, and then kind of the cross business technical guys who like to do it all.
Well, I was talking to another individual over lunch one day who was talking about trying to get films together, because he was also trying to get this. But he and it was a really interesting conversation, because he and I were kind of very different in this approach. Because when I think about trying to make something where it's been The Cultists or Dinner and a Board Game and all of that, I mean, it's definitely kind of in the trenches about how to get it done. But when he was talking about things, because I was like, he was trying to make this action adventure kind of movies and trying to make all these things happen. And I was like, well, who's going to make the suits of armor and this and how are you? And he was like, I don't know, because he was operating at a higher level than that. He was really trying to bring together, I got this IP, I want to make it happen with this actor. And he's really trying to connect things at a really high level. And like, who makes the costumes is really not something he was even like. No. He was going to hire somebody to do that.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to delegate. You got to do a good job of delegating, and that's probably where they were at. Yeah, there are no shortage of things you can find yourself doing if you're making a film, and you really have to be a strong-willed individual to make things good. I was a line producer on a film. And when the film would wrap, we'd look at what was shot that day, and then I'd go to Sam's and buy all the craft services for the next day. And I'm getting in at 2:00 in the morning, having to be on set for 8:00, and that didn't work out good for very long.
You can't do that very long.
No,
You cannot do that very
no.
long. Yeah.
So, but again, you have to either be able to raise the money or do the work. One of the two. If you can't raise enough money, then you have to wear multiple hats. But if you put a proper budget together and be disciplined enough to hold to that budget until you've raised all your money, not try to just say, hey, we got half the money, we can shoot the movie, let's go shoot it, and worry about editing later. You can't do that. That gets you in trouble more times than not. So figure a good, solid budget. Don't skimp. Don't think, well, I can do this or do that. If I have to be the craft services guy, if I have to be the editor, if I have to be, that's fine. No, raise all the money you want to raise, and don't start. Be disciplined enough to not start until you raised all your money, because you either got to pay for it or you got to have experience and do it.